Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our next session from the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. Many of you will know I'm Anne Livingston. I'm Chair of the Expert Reference Group of the Queensland Government-funded Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. I'm moderator for today's webinar on MyTech Project, Connecting People to Emerging Assistive Technology, an ILC WA project. This webinar is part of a series of sessions being facilitated by Community Resourcing for the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. These webinars have been designed from feedback and requests that we have received through the collaborative. Our webinars are bringing together international as well as national and local perspectives on research and development, as well as importantly focusing on the deployment of smart assistive technology in the community care sector. We're really fortunate to have extensive international linkages, and these have been used in many of the work that we've undertaken. For those of you who have attended previous sessions, we know that neither community resourcing or Queensland Government are endorsing one product or another. Rather, Queensland Government have provided funding to bring together an online platform for community care service providers who are interested in collaborating and practices regarding smart assistive technology. This site's accessible to all and is free to register. We really have the intent of promoting smart assistive technology, and our webinars have served us well in doing that. As I noted earlier, please formally note that neither Community Resourcing or the Department of Communities, Child Safety and Disability Services are promoting or endorsing any product, research entity or organisations. Rather, our webinars are serving to inform viewers of examples of various smart assistive technologies, either currently in development or in deployment. As attendees at today's sessions, and in the interest of recording, your microphones have been muted. We encourage you to ask questions though, and these questions can be added to the question pane to the right of your screen. There's always an opportunity that at the end of each of our sessions to have those questions answered by our presenters, but at previous sessions we know that we've been inundated with questions. So we asked you to please think about posting your questions early to ensure that we can cover this in today's session. In today's session, we're really fortunate to have Lauren and Linda from Western Australia who will share their knowledge and experience gained through the Independent Living Centre of Western Australia MyTech Project. This project is looking at the issue of smart AT, and we all know that this is often not prioritised despite the potential for it to maximise independence and social participation. This presentation will share examples of how current technology can be used to control the home environment through case studies from MyTech Project. Our two presenters, Lauren Fennell and Linda Tran, are both occupational therapists. Lauren joined the team at ILC in 2012 and particularly is interested in rural and remote issues and communities, and getting out in those communities to share her knowledge and to help bring technology to rural areas. As an OT on the MyTech team, Lauren has experience with working with clients to explore computer access, communication access relating to telecommunications, smart home automation, alerting devices, as well as the mounting of devices to mobility equipment. Linda joined the team also in 2012 in WA and works across the Assistive Technology Service MyTech Project and private options offered by ILC in Western Australia. Linda is experienced in working with a range of individuals in the areas of computer access, environmental control, telecommunications and literacy technologies. She is interested in all things assistive technology and co-runs the Assistive Technology Interest Group. It's my pleasure to welcome both Lauren and Linda to today's presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Anne. Good morning from Perth. My name is Lauren, and myself and Linda will be discussing our experiences of working with people with disabilities to access smart assistive technologies through the MyTech project. Our presentation today will follow these topics listed. So we'll start off with defining emerging technology, outline the MyTech project and what it is, the different equipment areas that these covered, where to start when looking at emerging technology, trends for accessibility that we found within our project. We've got a few case studies to share with you, our findings on the project, and some resources that we have used that we found helpful. So we hope that at the end you will have an understanding of how Smart AT fitted into the goals of our clients, as well as the opportunities and barriers we identified in working through the equipment prescription process. The MyTech project is ongoing and it is due to end at this financial year, so the findings we have at this stage are preliminary. Firstly, I wanted to explore the terms emerging technology and smart assistive technology. To us, emerging technology is a broad term which encapsulates Smart AT. So when I am describing what Smart AT is, I say that it is technology which can be programmed to conduct functions and provide feedback on an environment for an individual. So it usually has a high level of customization and generally connects multiple devices. The aim of the MyTech project is to assist people with a disability to access emerging technology. So because we use this broad term, this allowed us to include a broader range of equipment for our clients. We have a range of clients and their needs do not always require Smart AT, but they did need equipment that others hadn't previously considered as being assistive technology. So we use the definition of emerging technology as what was coming to the forefront of people's minds. Therefore, some equipment was not necessarily new to the market, but its use as AT was still emerging in the disability sector. And that's the definition that we decided to go with the project that you can see on the slide. So now, the MyTech project commenced in 2015 after the Independent Living Centre WA was awarded a grant to explore how people with disabilities were accessing emerging technology. It is funded by the Disability Services Commission WA, which is the primary disabilities service provider and funding body in this state. The project aimed to assist those who are not actively linked into therapy or equipment services to access therapist support to explore and attain equipment. So generally those are people who didn't have a primary therapist or service provider. It was hoped from this that it would raise awareness of Smart AT and educate the sector on the different areas of emerging technology and the benefits they can bring. As existing funding sources were used for all equipment, we aim to educate the funding bodies by applying for funding of equipment which previously hadn't been funded. So pushing that envelope. To provide some context for WA, it has an equipment prescription program where if you have a disability and require equipment that is basic and essential for independence and safety, then it will be provided to you. It operates on a long-term loan system, so once you outgrow or no longer need the equipment, you are to return it so it can be refurbished and reallocated. This is known as the Community Aids and Equipment Program, And so if you hear me say CAPE or Linda say CAPE during our presentation, that's what that refers to. And it has different equipment categories from which prescribers, generally health professionals, can draw funds to cover equipment needs for their clients. So some of the different categories include home modifications, mobility equipment, personal aids, communication, and it also now features environmental control units, which is fantastic. So this is a category which a lot of the equipment we were applying to fell into, that last one, environmental controls. This little flowchart, this diagram, shows the process that participants have access to through the project. Because the Independent Living Centre WA is primarily an information and advisory service, normally we don't see clients after their initial appointments, but this project allowed us to go those steps further to stay with them and support the individual to access the equipment that had been identified. So the project funds therapist time. It funds our time to do research of equipment, arrange for trials, complete assessments and funding applications. It does not fund the equipment itself, so we needed to access the existing funding pathways for our clients, such as CAPE or other alternative funding grants. Once equipment arrived, we were able to be there to assist in the setup and the learning of this new technology. So a lot of the time, our clients had limited exposure to Smart AT, so it was very important for us to be available to offer encouragement and support and to be there for a quick call person to get through so that they knew that they could speak to someone in particular if something was going wrong or they were having an issue. So that's just a brief overview of the MyTech project. I will now hand you over to Linda, who's going to go through some of the equipment areas.
Okay, so here is a list of categories that we came up with that we thought fit within our emerging technology definition. So some of the AT that falls into these categories, they're not brand new, as Lauren said before, but it's about them being emerging in the sense that they're becoming more known about and more prominent. So safety and call devices is the first one listed there, and that includes your personal alarm systems to be able to call for assistance, particularly in an emergency situation. Environmental control units and smart home automation are about being able to control appliances within a person's home, for example, operating the TV, doors to get in and out, and perhaps lights around the house. We did also consider GPS and tracking systems in our project. However, we didn't have any participants in the project where this solution was required. And we also looked at computer access and assistive technology options to allow improved access to people using a computing device or a tablet device. And then lastly, we did look at medication reminders as well in our scope of equipment areas for the project. So when we were meeting new participants in the project, we found that we needed to ask the right questions and make suggestions to get the conversation flowing. It just wasn't enough to ask, what smart AT or emerging technology do you think you might need or have you thought about? We needed to have a discussion about the person's current situation and if there were options to make things easier or better for them. I certainly found when talking to the participants that my most common phrase or most common thing that I said was, have you thought about ... So for example, I would say, have you thought about how to make and answer calls when you're in bed? Have you thought about using your voice to control the computer? Have you thought about how to call for help if your wife isn't home? And what I found was a lot of the time people hadn't considered that there might be an AT solution for these scenarios, and they were just managing the way that they've always had. So really the first step was getting the client to identify that there were these potential areas that we could look at. So to date in the project, we have seen 37 participants, and of these, the majority had a neurological condition or a spinal cord injury. The most common trends of what our participants wanted to do after having that initial conversation around their needs was to have independence with contacting others, whether for a social reason or an emergency situation, to be able to get in and out of their home independently, to be able to control appliances within their home, and also to be able to use their computer or tablet devices. So I found it interesting that these were all, well, certainly for me, things that I access and use and do every day, but these were only raised by the participants in the project after questioning how they currently lived. So Lauren is now going to share some examples of our case studies with you, and she'll go through 3 case studies.
All right, so our first case study, Miss N. This client has a profound hearing impairment and an intellectual disability. She was referred to the project to look into ways of alerting her to emergency situations in the home and when out in the community. So she also lives in a group home, so she wasn't the only person in that home to consider when we were looking at equipment. Some of the other residents had other needs, so we didn't want to impact on their lifestyles or their home as well. So it was quite interesting working in that kind of environment. It was identified that N was a very heavy sleeper and difficult to wake, which meant that her morning routines were a struggle. Also, alerting her to a fire emergency at night would be very difficult. And the main concern of the carers were that in such an emergency, they had 5 other people to get up and out of the house. How much time do they devote to someone who's incredibly hard to wake? So, when out in the community, N was always accompanied by a support worker or family member, as there were safety concerns regarding getting lost and crossing roads. So support workers and family regularly had difficulty attracting N's attention when in busy situations and needed a reliable way of contacting her when out. So we looked at a variety of alerting systems for N before we decided on a combination of Bellman Symphon products. And those are the ones that are up on the slide there. So the alarm clock was chosen as it had a attached pillow shaker, as well as the strobe flash function for in the mornings. It also acts as a receiver for the smoke alarm that was installed through the group home, so that if at night the smoke detector goes off, the alarm clock will strobe and shake. In the mornings, at 6:30 when she has to get up to go to work, the alarm will strobe and shake but not wake up everyone else in the home. A vibrating pager was provided for N to wear when she went out in the community, and this linked to a single push button which the support worker or family member would carry and use to gain N's attention when out and about. So this was something that the client and the family in the home felt comfortable with in using. They wanted something subtle that wouldn't attract a lot of attention, and that they were able to teach and was able to learn that when the pager vibrated, she would needed to stop and physically look around to see where her friends or caregivers were at the time. So these devices were considered emerging, as it was the first time the client, family and support provider looked into using an alert system for the home environment, but also just in terms of the way that we were using them so that she could be more independent and safe at home. Our second case study, Mr. B. This person lives with his wife in his own home, and he uses a powered wheelchair at all times, and he does not have a system in place that he can call for help if required. So the client's voice is affected by his neurological condition, which limits his ability to call for assistance. He also has reduced hand function and strength. So following initial discussions, it was identified that there are 2 main scenarios that he requires solutions for. The first was how to page or get his wife's attention when she is at the home but out of earshot. So for example, he could be in bed and she has gone outside. A common scenario that they provided was that she was outside hanging out the laundry and wouldn't be back in for a while. The second option, issue that he needed a solution for, was to be able to call for help if he is home alone, which is very important for anybody. So due to this client's hand function, he is not able to use a standard telephone. At the time, his wife didn't really go out very often on her own, and if she did, she'd make it a quick dash out because she didn't feel comfortable leaving him by himself. So it can add a lot of stress to the relationship and environment, not knowing that your partner that you're caring for is safe, and vice versa as well. He didn't want to feel like a burden that she couldn't go out. So with this case study, we are still in the process of trialing equipment, but possible solutions which we are working through are switch-adapted pager or walkie-talkie, as well as a wrist-worn emergency call system. And so these are the ones that we think are going to work the best for him. Finding a solution for these two scenarios will greatly increase the client's independence, as well as enable both he and his wife to feel safe when the other is out of the house. And these are some of the products on the slide that we have been looking at. So the switch-adapted pager is on the right. A mobile alert pendant is the one in the middle, which would need to be placed in a particular location for him to activate on his power chair. And on the left is a standard Uniden phone, but it has a pager function on it as well, with which can be wrist worn and switch adapted if needed. Our final case study that we wanted to share with you is probably our biggest one. This client we've been working with for over a year now, and this was our first home automation client through the project. Prior to this, clients were interested in controlling specific devices, but Dee really wanted to control his whole home. So Dee lives alone, and he spends the majority of time in bed due to pressure care needs. He has support workers who comes in 3 times a day, but during the hours when he is alone in bed, he has limited control over his environment. So on the left, there's a photo of his setup at the home when we first arrived in with the project. He has 6 remotes on a tray placed next to him on the bed, which he uses to control his roller door, TV, air conditioner, fan, to unlock the front door, and as well as that's the landline phone that he uses. So this setup, while worked, it was inefficient, and it required significant effort for Dee to operate, and it was also not reliable if the remotes were moved. So if the tray wasn't placed in the exact same position each day or each evening, or if one of the remotes was missing, he wouldn't be able to control it at all. So Dee identified really early on, so he is a person who, he has a range of other smart AT. He already was using Dragon Naturally Speaking for his computer and access, and he was using that to wake up his computer, which was connected to his flat screen TV that was mounted on the wall, so that would provide him with light during the night. So he'd tell his computer to wake up so that the screens would illuminate the room. So he's a very savvy kind of guy, and he quickly identified that he would really like to be able to see who he was unlocking the door to. Fair enough. He would like to be able to open the door himself rather than just unlocking it. He also would like to control the lights in the main areas of the house, so mainly his bedroom, lounge and kitchen, and operate the blind in his bedroom. So Dee was especially keen to be able to control the natural light in his room, as carers opened the blinds when they arrived at 8:30 in the morning and then closed them at 6 p.m. So during summer and with extended daylight hours, Dee felt as though he was missing out. So he had to choose whether lights were left on all night or they were turned off when the carers left. So if possible, he would like to control his home via voice recognition as well. So we had a lot of different systems that we tried and a lot of different product research, especially surrounding the voice recognition component. And through trying different systems and interfaces, it was decided that the Fibaro home automation system would be most appropriate for Darren. So we looked into the customizability of the different platforms as well as the devices that can be controlled. So funding was applied to through CAPE, our state funding, And some of this equipment was above the ceiling price that they have for environmental controls, and also wasn't considered basic and essential. So therefore, we had to get additional funding through grants to make up the difference, which we were able to achieve. So that the end result is that now Darren has complete control over his environment through a tablet, which he is placed on that tray where the remotes are. So all the remotes are gone. The landline telephone does still remain. And he also has a smartphone which is mounted to his power chair so that he can still control that when he's up and about. Voice control is still being looked into and has potential to be integrated into the Fibaro system. It's just that having something that works with the tablet devices is a bit tricky. So Fibaro is a natural voice activation system through Siri, but Dee has an Android tablet and smartphone, so it's just taking a little bit longer, but it is possible. So he's very excited about that. And this was probably the biggest learning curve for us in terms of timelines about getting funding through, the prescription process, how many times it takes to trial an app and a tablet. So really interesting. I'll now pass you over to Linda, who's going to go through some of our findings.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. So our project is ending soon, so we wanted to share some of our findings so far. The biggest barrier we did come across, I guess reflecting on the project, and it was probably apparent relatively early, was the lack of knowledge around assistive technology and specifically smart assistive technology. And it is the age-old, you don't know what you don't know. And what this means is for clients or users, they don't know what to ask for, and prescribers are perhaps not offering it or suggesting it as an option. So we found that current services are reactive to people's needs and reliant on their clients requesting or identifying the needs themselves. So I guess for NDIS in the future, it means that the participant or the planner will be responsible for including this type of technology as part of their goals, or the onus is on the primary therapist perhaps to suggest this during their assessment. It's also important that the participant and planner have realistic knowledge about how long it actually takes to research, product match, trial, set up and train a person with smart assistive technology products. Because with technology, there are a lot of interacting components and requirements in terms of hours allocated. We've also found that troubleshooting is not always possible to complete over the phone, just because there are so many factors involved, and sometimes an issue would require multiple home visits to resolve in terms of eliminating different factors from the equation to figure out what was wrong. So another barrier is the availability of demo equipment to be able to trial the products themselves. Not having access to equipment to try makes it more difficult to determine product suitability, as these products either require programming, professional installation, or are just not available locally. So this also meant that more time was dedicated to product research to ensure that the item being ordered or prescribed was going to meet the needs of the person. Some products that we looked at were also from mainstream suppliers or electrical department stores, so the likelihood of equipment trial was fairly low. It also meant that accessing funding was difficult if the sole supplier was online only, as ordering through our Cape State system was difficult because they needed written quotes in order for them to order the equipment. Luckily, we were supported by the project to be able to spend all our time researching products and how they work and interact. And we are fully aware that in the current environment, that time is a precious commodity, and I guess we understand why this area of AT is not prioritised. However, we strongly feel that people should be made aware of smart AT and the benefits so that they can make an informed choice as to what their AT priorities are. So I guess our take-home messages for today were really to attempt to make a start and to encourage and educate in the use of smart AT. And we don't solely see education as a role for the AT prescriber or health professional. We think that clients or users of AT, especially your expert users, could share their experiences as well. So the next slide is about some resources available that might be useful for making a start or how to learn more. So we have the National Equipment Database, also known as NED, which is a website where anyone can access information about assistive technology products available in Australia. For those of you who don't know, it's a collaboration between the independent living centres across the country, and it can be used to browse products in general or to find out information about specific products. So next we've got the Equip Myself app. So it's a free app developed by Independent Living Centre WA, available to download via the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. And it's a visual tool that gives people some ideas about what assistive technology might look like in the different environments, such as home, at work, or in the community. And it's helpful as a starting point. And just a note that it's best viewed on tablet devices. And then lastly, @Chat, which is fairly new. It's a project whose vision is to create a conversation amongst AT users about their experiences and knowledge about AT. The standout feature of @Chat is that it's designed for people who use AT by people who use AT. And their aim is to guide, inform and keep people in the loop about assistive technology in a really interactive way, such as social media. So watch this space as they officially launch in September. The Facebook group is now active and they're still looking for any users of assistive technology to partake in surveys, and there are focus groups that are happening in WA at the moment.
And thank you very much. That was all we had planned to communicate with you about the MyTech project. And we'd be very interested to answer any questions that you might have about our experiences or technology that you think.
Thank you. That's a great presentation today. I just encourage people to post their questions. We've got some already, Lauren and Linda, and I'll go to those questions as people are posting others. I just remind people to post those questions on the question pane on the right of your screen, and we'll get to each of those questions. I've got a question about ongoing funding for your project. It was obviously very successful, Lauren and Linda, and I've got a question about, are you receiving any ongoing funding?
The short answer to that one is no. So the funding was a block funding granted by the Disability Services Commission here in WA, and it ends June 30. So all the funding that was allocated to seeing clients is to be finished June 30. They have extended to the end of the December time for the write-up and analysis of our results. But after that, no.
Okay, I think I've got a question, and it's a bit of a comment too from Noel, one of the participants today. It seems that your project findings were sort of fairly in line with the discussion papers that the NDIA had released around barriers to access to smart assistive technology. And Noel just comments that that they're great findings, and are you planning to share those robustly with the NDIA?
I believe so, yes. And so what was great about, we were granted the extension of funding for 6 months after June 30 to be able to do a really robust analysis of our results and be able to format that and present that so that it can be used as evidence, as an evidence base for the future for NDIA. And so, yes, we will be sharing that.
And Wendy asks, most of the examples that you used in your case studies were wearables of some shape or form, or things that you had to activate. Did you explore many non-wearables?
Yes, so there were some. So I suppose with the alerting system in the case study for N, the smoke detector, that wasn't wearable. But I suppose with the home automation ones that we've seen, people, yes, there are sensors, so they would set up their own sequences to happen. So when they approached the home, the lights came on, the roller door opened, the aircon started. One of our clients had that set up as a rule. So with the automation systems, I guess I spoke about how that person controlled them, because that's the way that D really wanted to have that control. But they are possible to be acted as sensors, and so to act automatically like a proper smart automation. A lot of, in general, we didn't have any equipment that alerted someone else. Everything had to be kind of related to the client, so either the client activated, or if the client wanted to let someone else know something. We didn't have any setups where it was a home which detected movement, or how often they were used opening the fridge or anything like that to report on living accessibility.
Great, that's great. We also had a question about your last slide that pertained to the resources. Could you tell Jenny, who's asked the question, can you tell us a bit more information about the AT Chat project? You mentioned it was going to be launched in September, is that correct?
Yes, so that's currently happening at the moment, and I think they've had
their first focus group yesterday.
Yeah, they had their first focus group, and really at this stage they are trying to get as much feedback as possible from AT users about how they get access to information, what platform, and that's really what that survey is all about, and they're still really looking for surveys for AT users to complete that survey so that they can work out the best manner to communicate the information that they will have out to people. And it's going to be a sharing platform, and so there's still some questions about how it will look, but hopefully through the focus groups and the surveys that can build, I guess, something that will be really accessible for people.
Yeah, and so and I was just going to say that they're hoping that the platform is live in September, so that's when the platform goes up.
And is that a WA initiative, and is it an initiative of ILC or some other group?
It's a WA initiative. AtChat is separate to the Independent Living Centre, but we are working, there is some collaboration on that, and my understanding was that there was a grant funding from NDIS to get it started, capacity building and linkages.
Oh, terrific. That's a great project, and we'll certainly be in touch with you guys about some contacts for them for a future webinar. I guess I've got Harry's made a comment, and maybe a comment and a question. Harry really picked up on your comments that prescription and offerings have been fairly reactive, and that perhaps therapists are reacting to the suggestions that people come to the table with. And he was asking, is there any views or comments that you would make about how to turn that around to more a proactive way of giving people access to the full range of smart, assistive and emerging technologies?
It's a really good question, and I think that what we're kind of working with our clients is it's going to be ongoing as people's awareness about smart AT increases, and especially about how it works, what it is, what it can do, what differences it can make. then I think people will start including it a bit more in their minds. So I think a good example is like with telecare and personal alarms. About even 5 years ago, they weren't overly popular, but then people started to know how they worked, saw the benefits, how they could be applied in different situations for different people, how it wasn't necessarily just for the elderly, it could also be for someone with a disability, it could be for an office worker who does a lot of home visiting and needs a quick way to let someone else know that they need help. Then people started thinking and asking, like, oh, how do you communicate? What if it's an emergency? Do you need an emergency alert? So I'm hoping that as emerging technology increases and the awareness about how it is available and the availability of it increases, we'll start thinking about that, and it'll kind of come into people's psyche as well. We always like to try and promote when people come into the ILC for an advice service, go through their background and ask them a lot of how do you do things questions, because I think that really shows the insight. And if you ask someone, how do you make a phone call, and they say, oh, I don't, or I wait for someone to come dial for me, I think that's a great thing. Instead of saying, and is that working for you? They're most likely to say, yeah, that is working for me. Then say, would you like to try doing it yourself? Do you want to have a go? So I think I know that that's just like quite an opinion kind of piece, but I think it really is just trying to push people's awareness about the equipment and just asking them some of those basic questions about things that, when you think about all the things you do during a day, I make a phone call, I turn light switches on, I unlock the door, I have to get the keys out. There's lots of different things. I write emails. I do them every day. I think it's just about asking people, how do they do that?
And I think especially for WA in terms of a shift of thinking, especially with our state-funded system, I guess the terms have always been basic and essential, but that shift to reasonable and necessary, I guess, has actually opened up
people's minds to it a bit as well, because they think basic, what's basic? I need a shower chair. What's essential? I need to be able to get places or to be safe. What's reasonable? Is it reasonable to be able to control your home or to make a phone call? Yes. Is it necessary? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So hopefully just changing in psyche is going to be gradual, but 10 years ago no one really had a smartphone. So
we think the time is now.
Time is now.
Okay, that's great. And one final question. Of the 5, you listed 6 types of new technologies that you were testing out, and you commented that you only really looked at 5. Of that 5 that you looked at, was there a standout that from the project? I think you said you deployed about 36 times. Is that right?
Yeah. Is this to do with the equipment areas, like the kind of categories?
Yes, yeah. So within the deployments that you did, was there a real standout technology that had the best return on investment for individuals, or was the most cost effective?
Oh, it's a bit hard to say at this stage. I think for 2 reasons. One, we're just really still seeing people and doing their evaluations on their equipment. Not everyone's got all their equipment yet. And the second one is that each person has individual equipment. So one person might have only gotten safety and telephone related equipment, and one person could have gotten everything the home automation could offer. So it really came down to what their priorities were and their goals were. So one person was super happy to just be able to make a phone call. They didn't, hands-free phone call, they didn't want to know about emails, didn't want to know about messaging. Absolutely elated to be able to make a phone call. So for him, that piece of equipment was invaluable. Someone else, that wouldn't have been enough. So very individualized, bit hard to say. I think
and maybe that's a question for a larger you know, maybe a larger project might perhaps be able to inform that better.
Yes.
I said it was one last question, but Julie, you've just I think have put a quick question on the board there. Can ILC visits or appointments be conducted by VC for those that live in rural and remote towns? Is WA ILC offering that?
Yes, absolutely. We do that all the time. So we're funded to provide information and advice services to the entire state. So we have physical trips. So I do the Kimberley and Pilbara regions, and I will be going up there with equipment and smart equipment in July, August, and it's statewide as well. So we do a lot of VCs, and we can do Skypes. However, people would like to get in touch with us, we can arrange that.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Lauren and Linda, and I'll formally thank you at the end of the presentation. Just for everyone on the line, if you haven't already formally registered at our collaborative, the registration details are there. It's a free service, so we're keen. If you do register formally, you can interact with the site without registering, but if you register, you'll get our regular updates and be notified of events. In terms of upcoming events, we've got two big events on at the moment. We're doing a symposium in conjunction with the Australian Living Labs Network, and really this is focusing on the co-creation, co-design of technologies with individuals and with the end users. Also, the following day, I encourage you to consider coming along to our Community Care Business Transformation and Innovation Conference. Both these events are being held at QUT, and we have a networking event in the middle of these two events in conjunction with the State Library of Queensland, and having an exclusive tour of their digital futures laboratory. And Swinburne University from Victoria are going to demonstrate some of their research work around using smart technologies for dementia care, and particularly utilising smart technologies in the music therapy space. So I encourage you to have a look at the sites and speak to some of the project team if you're interested in it. For today's presentation, I'd like to formally thank the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Project team, and in particular Liz Dodd and Imogen Guinea, who've been organising today's webinar. We're backed by a very large and very contributing expert reference group, and I'd like to thank those individuals who contribute regularly to that group. None of this work could be made possible without funding, and I'd like to acknowledge the Queensland Government for their funding. Particularly like to thank our two presenters today. Our industry is in very safe hands with the contribution that you guys are making to the uptake of assistive technology. So thank you, Lauren and Linda, for your contribution today. If you'd like some further information on the project and any of the upcoming events, or want to make some suggestions for upcoming webinars, please let us know by emailing the team at sat@communityresourcing.com.au. A couple of suggestions have already come through from your presentation today, Lauren and Linda, so thank you for expanding also the range of webinars that we've got on offer. Thanks everyone for joining us today. A big crowd on board registered for today, and thank you for listening.